Everyone, we're ready to get started. This is Don Larson again. So before we get started, just I want to go through our housekeeping rules or procedures we use for these webinars. All attendees will be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you do experience problems when joining the webinar, use the questions function in the webinar control panel to communicate. Computer audio is the recommended option, which most of you are using. We have provided some data sheets that can also be found in the control panel under handouts. You can just drag and drop those little images or PDFs to your desktop. So we welcome you to do that at any time. You can post questions during the webinar using the questions panel or questions box in the panel. So feel free to do that as those questions come to mind. And then questions will be answered following the main presentation, or if we run out of time, by email. The agenda is the company overview, for those of you not familiar with Larson software, and then we'll have an introduction to the webinar. We'll go over the content, and then we'll actually drill down some CGM viewing in detail, the different modes, and a little bit of futures into future technology. We'll have some live demos, follow up then with the Q&A session, and then some closing remarks. So those of you who are not familiar with Larson software, we're based in Houston. We just moved to a new location. If you are familiar with Houston, on Derry Ashford. We were founded in 1984. We're graphics technology experts for 30 years. We develop powerful, innovative graphic software and toolkits based on open standards. We promote the CGM usage by providing a free CGM TIFF viewer. We've been doing that for many, many years. Just this year now, we went to a subscription version, which is available on our store for a nominal fee that you can purchase and administer yourself. And we're the developer of the first HTML5 CGM viewer. If that doesn't mean anything to you, we'll explain that later, but eliminates the need for plugins for CGM, viewing CGMs. And Larson Technology simplifies the graphics workflow for tech pub professionals, engineers, geologists, and geophysicists. So with that said, I'll now turn it over to Dave for the body of our David Manning for the main part of our presentation.
Thank you, Don. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. As Don just explained, we're going to look at the discipline of CGM graphics viewing today. We feel it really splits neatly into two areas or disciplines, and that's standalone and technology. So standalone is probably a lot of you familiar with our viewing technology, where you can install a specific application onto your computer, or in some cases mobile devices, and view CGM or TIFF graphics. The other area that we'll look at today is technology, because we provide a lot of technology to developers for implementing viewing solutions embedded inside, say, for instance, a web page, something like that. And this is becoming a great way of distributing information, either internally or externally within organizations. So what's the primary requirement of a standalone viewer? Well, obviously view is one of them. So just to view the graphic and probably interact in it in some way. But also it's important we have an ability sometimes to actually convert from one file format to another. So we have customers who want to open the CGM perhaps and then convert it to another format that's more suitable for the environment or that they're in within their organization. And also print. Although we're seeing a moving away from a print kind of paradigm, is people going to large screens or just distributing their information via a web page. But still, print is very important for presentations, particularly large formats. So we still see that as an important function that we support. So probably a lot of you are familiar with CGM, but perhaps not the fact that why it actually came about and why it's being used. And it's used in lots of different industries, but it is non-proprietary, and it's open, and that's one of the prime reasons that it was adopted by many industries. Also the fact that it can contain raster and vector data and retain those attributes within that one file format, which is key again for many industries. Particularly oil and gas, it was the preferred graphics format. It was driven by the PIP profile and has a particular extension for seismic data as well. So, and a lot of the industry solutions actually support that. It's also important to aerospace and defense specifications as well, because it's compliant with international standards. So, and this is all really driven by its open format, not proprietary. It's also governed by the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium as well. So there's a particular profile for delivering CGM files on the web, and we obviously support that. So interoperability is a useful and key kind of facet of CGM, in the fact that you can move it from system to system and it's still going to work, another reason for its adoption. And it also supports metadata. So, and we'll look at that as we go along in some of the presentations, is that it can contain kind of interactive areas that could create a link or something like that. So, but we'll look at, it's easier to show you that than actually explain it. So, as we mentioned, the view is the key. We want to view the CGM or TIFF graphic, and so there are various scenarios where you want to do that. So it could be embedded inside some kind of interactive manual, or just in a web environment itself, but we need to display that file and see it. Also on a mobile device, say an iOS or an Android device, you might want to see that data. Also, if we bring in data in from an external system, then we don't have the mechanism to view it on our desktop, then a viewer would enable us to see that file exported from another system. And more specifically, it could be seismic data or well log data that we want to view that has come out of those types of software, but we want to see independently on our own desktop. And then finally, quality assurance. So this perhaps not in oil and gas, but in other industries, we might want to actually look at the file and mark it up as to make sure that it's correct and it doesn't need to be edited further. So there are different scenarios where you need to view the information. And I mentioned convert. So this is mainly for data exchange. So if we're moving from one system to another, and where the systems don't support perhaps CGM or TIFF, and you need to get it into another format. So you might want to open a CGM file and create a format that you could take into, say, Microsoft Office. So Office actually stopped the support of CGM some time ago, so you would now need to get another file format to, say, import it as a picture, perhaps a JPEG or a PNG. And we can show you how there's another way of doing that with one of our viewers as well, which is much more seamless. But you might want to open a file format from another system. Say it was from AutoCAD and you want to bring in a DWG and then save it as a CGM. So you could distribute it around to your other colleagues who have a CGM viewer. So there's a lot of data exchange scenarios that could also apply just to a viewing environment. So more functionality. And then finally, print. As I said, perhaps we see people moving away from print. But it is still significant if you want to put something into a report. You might want to print to PDF, which again brings up other data exchange scenarios where you want to exchange a PDF file with your colleagues who have Adobe Viewer perhaps. And then print to large format devices. so for presentation purposes. So a lot of our customers still do this, and although it might not be as relevant as it used to be. So CGM graphics viewers features what we're looking for in those viewers after we've said all that. So obviously it needs to be cost effective. We don't want to pay a lot for these software. It needs to be task orientated, flexible, easy and intuitive to use, and mobile device friendly as well as we move forward into this kind of mobile world, tablets and phones. And from an embedded viewer point of view, we need it to be easy to implement, cross-platform. We need to be able to use the viewer across different web browsers, say IE, Chrome, Safari. And the key functionality here is interaction. So we want to be able to interact with the file, with the graphic, in order to get information from it or link to other information. So here's some of our technology. So we've got VisX Reader, VisX Pro, VisX Geotech, and iVisX. And I'll give you a kind of a brief overview of these and also a brief demo so you can get a feel for what viewers do, more particularly our viewers. So VisX Reader, this is our entry-level reader viewer, and it supports CGM and TIFF formats. It has basic functionalities of pan and zoom and limited print functionality, but it doesn't add any data exchange capability. But it is very cost effective, and it is in our online store. So let's just bring that up to begin with. So VisX Reader, we can open files. So these could be CGM or TIFF. So let me just navigate to some files. So this is a CGM file. So on here we can save it, but doesn't really make much difference to us because we can't really save it as other formats. We can obviously print. We can zoom in on a particular area, and we can pan around the graphic. So we could print for a report or something like that. I can resize this to fit into the window here. And what we've done on this particular file, we've added some hotspot information. So you can see that here we can get some feedback from the illustration. So this might be useful on this type of map or whatever to get some feedback for the user. And we can add that, and we'll show later using VisX Pro. I can also show the hotspots on here. So we've also put some onto the map itself to get some feedback. So the particular color-coded areas, we can see 13 and so forth, plus 13, minus 16. So hotspots, we really see a big benefit for the oil and gas industry in actually enhancing their information. So Reader really just gives you the way to view that, whereas as we move on to Pro, you'll see that we've got some ways of actually adding that information to the graphic. Okay, so let's just go quickly back to the slides. So talking about Pro, it's got enhanced functionality. So it's kind of our next step up and is widely used within oil and gas. So we can add markup, we have a large print capability, we can add commonly used industry symbols, we can draw shapes and we can change those into hyperlinks, and we have really good data exchange capabilities. So as the name suggests, this is a Pro version, and we can really step up and create some interesting information for the users. So we have evaluation versions of all the software if you need to get to grips with it further. So let's go to Pro. It doesn't really look a lot different till I open a file. So I'm going to open the same file to begin with. But we can see here we have a lot more options, not only to view the file, but to add or enhance the file. Still, the hotspots are still the same, they're still working on here. So But what we can do now is do some kind of data exchange stuff. So we can still pan and zoom in and so forth on here. So it's still possible to do all these things. But we have quite a lot of customers who want to sometimes exchange information, say, with our office products. And probably the easiest way to do that is we can do a selection on here. So let's just zoom back out a bit so we can see what we're doing. So I can say I want to select an area here, and then I want to copy that. Let's bring up Word, and you can see I've done one already, but I can just paste this into here. So I can paste that section of the map into Word very easily. Or it could be into Excel, it could be into PowerPoint. So I begin to exchange data with other software very easily from the viewing environment. And that's a common question we've been asked, really. How do we get information out of here into, say, an office product? So this is probably the easiest, most straightforward way of doing that. We can then move on to markup. So these are all our markup tools. What do I mean by markup? What I might want to do is add an annotation for whoever's viewing this information. So I might want to say I want them to investigate this area. And here it's going to create a kind of a label for me. So this is the text I want in the box, text size, the color of the background. I want it to be in a rectangle, and I want an arrow as well. And the arrow to be a particular color, and the line to be a particular color and line width. So let's just say OK. And I'm going to click here. You can see it's added in the text. And then I can drag the arrow over to the area I want to actually indicate. If I'm not happy with it, I can double click and reopen it. And perhaps I want to change the line color to something a bit more visible. So let's try that one. And we'll say OK. And then I can zoom in on that area as well. So we can see that it's marked it up here. And then when I've done my markup, I can then save that out as a file, still containing this information, which you then can view in and distribute to my colleagues. So it's a really good way of actually distributing the information around the organization. So I can also draw various shapes on here as well. So let's say I want to draw a rectangle, and I want to highlight this area myself. But this time I want to create a link to it. So what I can do is I can transform this into a hyperlink. So perhaps I want to, let's just see what I can do here. Perhaps I want to create a link to a URL. But I also want to, I could also browse and link it to another file. So I could actually link this map to another one that's relevant to it. So I could link it to any of these. And then I could create a screen tip to say, perhaps area of interest. Okay, so now if I move over this area, the screen tip comes up, and if I click on it, it's going to take me to the web page. Unfortunately, gone to my other screen, but it is there. I'm going to show you. So it's just take us to our website. So let's just go back to Vizex Pro. Okay, and it's took me over to the other screen. Okay, so that just shows you some new things perhaps you've not discovered if you're a user already of what you can do with Vizex Pro. The other thing I spoke about is actually adding symbols. So here we have a well log, and perhaps I want to actually add symbols to this. So we have a symbol library that you can bring up with commonly used symbols. So this one's for church, and then I can just add it to the graphic here again. And again, you can save this containing this information, so it's not lost. It's something we can retain and then distribute around the organization. So I could keep going, but as you can see, we've got lots of different symbols on here that you can add. But then I can save this particular well log with those symbols on it. So a really useful function. Okay, so I did speak about data exchange. So if I go to save as, we can save this file now as, perhaps I don't want to save it as a CGM, perhaps I want to save it as a PNG or a JPEG. Then I can do that from here, and I can exchange it with other software perhaps, or embed it into a web page. And if I go to open, you can see that I can bring in other CGMs or DWG, perhaps from AutoCAD, EMF, enhanced matter files from Windows programs, or TIFF files. So I can actually bring in other data, save it as a CGM, and then distribute it out. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that we've not only got a viewer, but we've also got a way of exchanging data as well. And I think that's important. And the final one is print. So we have quite an extensive print dialog box. So this will enable you to do large format printing. We can just do a selected area of the graphic, or so we can really customize this however we want, and go to large format printers if we're still doing presentations in that particular way. Perhaps even print to PDF. Okay, so let's go back to the slides, and we'll go to VisX Geotech. So VisX Geotech has all the functions of VisX Pro, all of them, but it has some very specific functionality we added in for oil and gas. So we can view well logs side by side, we can lock them, we can also create composite graphics of the data, and we support the petroleum industry profiles as well. And again, we can evaluate this if it's of interest. So let's go to VisX. We call it VisX GT or VisX Geotech. So I've got some well logs, so let me just go back up slightly. And here we can see that I can go to open files, but I could open like more than one file at a time. So let's just open both of those. And you can see what it does is it just creates two separate windows for us that we can put those into. But the nice function here that we have is that, say there's a particular area of the graphic here that I want to use somewhere else or alongside the other one. So let me just oops, sorry, it's still on my zoom. Let's take that off. Okay, let's just go back to the size again, and we'll just zoom in. In fact, we won't zoom in at this point. We'll just use our command here. I want to take out this part. So it's a bit similar to what I did before with a Word document. So I've selected an area, but now I want to create what we call a composite. So it automatically creates a new window and puts that information in. And the same here is I can now take a separate graphic, and I could take the whole thing over, or I could just take a section of it as I did before. So you could create a composite, you can save that out as a new file and then distribute that. And we also have the ability here to print the multi-view out, so you could print all these different views out at one time. So that's one of the enhanced parts of the functionality. So I'm just going to close these down. And I'm going to open up some other well logs. We have some black and white ones as well. And this time I'm going to open 4 at the same time. Okay, And you might notice here I've got this other icon called lock. What that means is I can lock, and all of them will do the same thing now. So if I want to zoom in on this one, it will zoom in on all of them at the same time. Okay, and if I scroll, then all of them scroll together. So at this point, what I do is take the lock off and then just move these up so we can line them up. So I'm working now with them individually just to line up the log, and then lock, and then they're all going to work together. So this is great for comparisons, and I can even at this point say add in a guide. So hopefully we can see there's a guide there, and it's visible. If I drag it, you'll be able to see it. So perhaps I want to create a reference point that I can move around and then scroll. You can see I can have more than one as well. So that's some of the enhanced functionality of GT, so more specific to the oil and gas industry. So let me just go back to my slides. The other one, which unfortunately we can't really demo, is iVisX, which is our app for iOS. We don't have one for Android, but we do have one for the iPhone and iPad. So you can get this from the App Store, and it's got a lot of the functionality of VisX Pro, but obviously you could use it on a mobile device. So please go and have a look for that. You can just do a search on iVisX and you should find it quite easily. So that's the standalone viewers. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're also talking about embedded viewing technology. So we provide kind of viewer software development kits. And one of the primary ones is one I mentioned earlier, is one for the web. So CGM is it's always been difficult to sometimes implement solutions for the internet and intranet for CGM, and the ability to interact with that graphic is really paramount. So when you have like a JPEG or something, it's sometimes difficult to get other information from it. It's usually from an overlay or something like that. So CGM really gives you a good way of interacting with the graphic in a web environment. And this was usually done with a plugin technology. And we have our own plugin technology, but that is now tending to go into the background a bit, as we've got HTML5, which has really changed the game really for the internet and for use of graphics and other audio and video as well. So HTML5, what is it? It's an open standard. It's another W3C recommendation, so it's open, it's not owned by anybody. But one of the key things that introduced was a way of actually embedding graphics, audio into a web page without the need for any kind of plug-in technology. So when I say plug-in, probably one of the most famous ones is Flash and so forth. So this is a new way of actually distributing this information, and you don't have to install a plugin to do it. So let's just go on to, so what's possibly the use cases for this? So at the moment, this technology that we've introduced is mainly used in kind of technical manuals. So things like operating instructions, interactive spare parts catalogs. But we see a really fantastic opportunity for the oil and gas to embrace this as well. So why would you want to do that? Perhaps develop cloud-based viewers to present and distribute your information internally and externally within a web environment. Most people have got access to that on their computer or on their tablet device, and it'd be a great way of distributing that information throughout the organization. And we'll show you a short demo of VisX View HTML5, so it gives you an idea of how you might do that. So these are the primary SDKs or software development kits that we provide, and our main focus today will be on VisX View HTML5. So what does it do? So it enables you to to display CGM files quickly and easily in a web page, say in Chrome. It has also the support for other formats. Now, not only CGM, but also TIFF, JPEG, BMP, PNG, GIF in that environment as well. Allows you to do text searches, display multiple images on a page, allows you to link to XML files, which can give you external data. So you might have like spreadsheets that you want to link to the graphic. So it really gives you an environment that you could really use to do a cloud-based solution for your data, perhaps. And if you want to, the evaluation version is easy to get to. It's on the web, so you just click a link, fill in your name and your email, and that's about it. So why is it so important? Well, it gives you cross-browser support. So you could have a CGM across Linux, Windows, Android, iOS, on Edge, on Internet Explorer, on iOS, Safari, anything you can think of, you could distribute the information, the same information. So we still do our ActiveX control, and we still have a large customer base using it, and we still support them. But we do recommend new users go away from that. But why did it go? Why has it gone away? And I think some of the main reasons are that it had to be installed on the target computer. So that immediately eliminated things like tablet devices because there was no real install for it. But one of the main things that it was criticized for, and this was Flash and things like Adobe Flash, was the security issues that it caused within the IT departments and so forth. So a lot of departments banned it entirely. So that was its really downfall. And now there's other solutions coming along that really mean that the plugins will not be necessary. And a lot of the browsers have abandoned the plugin technology anyway. So we really see it going away. And then we have the ability with our SDKs, you could create your own app. So if you've got people within your organization who create apps for iOS or Android, we have the SDKs to allow them to do that. And even at the high-end scale, you could even create your own applications for CGM viewing. So create your own viewer, your own custom viewer for your own organization if you wanted to do that. So let's just do a short demo of VisXView HTML5. So this, once you've gone through the evaluation registration, which is really short, then you will come to this page. So we give you like a getting started, all the references, and if you have a web developer or something like that, then this is really easy to implement. So it's not high level kind of C++ programming or anything like that. This is really straightforward. So we have an example of a basic CGM file viewer here. So kind of a cut down kind of VisX Pro or even a VisX Reader. And then I could open a file as I did previously. So I'm going to open the same file again. So this is loading from across the internet, so it might not be quite as quick, but you can see the hotspots are still working. So this file is now in the web in Chrome. So this is just a Chrome page. And I'm going to open another file up. So let's just open this one up as well. So this is just show you something different. So it loads pretty quickly once it's in memory. We can zoom in and you'll see it renders really fast, hopefully. Obviously going to allow for the internet on the webinar software. But hopefully you can see that we're moving around, and now this could be viewed really by anybody. They don't need to have anything installed on their computer. No viewer. They just take advantage of this kind of way of distributing the information. So let's just take that a bit further. This is not really an oil and gas. I'm really trying to come up with something that's specific to oil and gas, but perhaps it might show you the possibilities. So here, when we roll over these hotspots, so these are just hotspots that I could have created in VisX Pro. can you see that it actually highlights the table? So you could perhaps think of something where you might have similar scenarios in your own industry, that you want to have this kind of interactive feedback when you roll over perhaps a map or something like that, that it highlights something on a table, some more data. And this actually can interact both ways. So if I click on bearing, you can see that it highlights this area, and we've got the tooltips as well. So this really, and again, we're just in Chrome, so this is a really different way of perhaps presenting your information to users, either in person or just on a web page. So that's really a short demo. Let's just go back to the slide. Hope you get some impressions of what we can do. So just some final remarks on what we presented. So why do we still need to view CGM and TIFF graphics? Perhaps some of you see that there's a move away from those type of graphics, perhaps towards PDF or something, but we still see this as the most widely used graphics format in, say, in oil and gas, and certainly aerospace and defense. And there's a substantial legacy archive of CGM and TIFF files out there. So you still need to be able to view these files. And you need to do that reliably, but also exchange with different systems as well. And a lot of the industry standard software is still supporting CGM, like from Halliburton, Schlumberger and Kingdom. So it's still important in that respect as well. So why not just convert CGM files to another format? So we do a lot of conversion software as well, and there's always a potential for data loss, and that can, and sometimes could be critical data that's being lost. And also the cost to convert. There's also potentially a large cost to do the conversion, because it's not only converting, it's also going back and making sure that data is still valid. So at this point, we can open up to some questions. So let me just look at our window here, and I'm going to bring Don back at this point. So obviously Don's got a long history in the oil and gas industry with his company. So I'm going to ask this first question for you, Don. Can I make a PDF from a CGM?
Yeah, you could use BizX Pro and do a print to PDF. But one caveat, and it's something we've learned, though, is that it depends on, there's a lot of PDF drivers. You all may have noticed with Windows 10 that they've started bundling a Microsoft print to PDF, which is good, but one word of caution on that is it doesn't support large formats. You can only support a letter size. So if you've got an Adobe product that gives you the Adobe PDF, print to PDF, it's much better. So the answer is yes, you can do it, but it's limited by the PDF printing software that you have on your computer. And so the Adobe one's best, as you can do lots of sizes, and it works very well. You know, you can print a big CGM map, seismic section. Gets a little hairy with a seismic section because the PDF doesn't have a good way to represent that image data. But for maps, and it works well. So yes.
Okay, thanks for that, Don. So another question here: when I convert CGM to TIFF, will it retain the scale?
Yes, it will essentially. If it's assuming that your map or whatever you're coming from is in the proper scale, but whatever the scale is in millimeters or inches of your CGM, that will be retained in the TIFF. And so whatever software you're going to there, if it can honor that scale, that information is there.
Okay, that's great. And a final one is, what is the difference between CGM and CGM Plus? Good question.
Yeah, well, the CGM Plus is that's certainly something that is specific to this oil and gas industry, specifically seismic, and for people working with the tools from like Landmark or Kingdom, which are seismic interpretation systems. They can output seismic, so the CGM Plus is a way to put this seismic information in the CGM along with other information, and it's a much more efficient, high resolution than you can get with any other format. So CGM Plus is specific to oil and gas. It's very high resolution, and it's supported by most of the Landmarks, Schlumberger, Petrel, those kind of tools all support it.
Okay, and do all our viewers support the opening of CGM Plus?
Yeah, right. Well, that's probably, I forgot to say that. Yes, of course, they all support it.
Okay. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Don. That's all the questions we have. So thank you for asking them this morning. So we'll just go wrap up. So thanks for attending. You will receive an email with links to the recordings and slides, or just recording. You can view, we have a blog at cgmlarson.com if you want to see some other information. There's some things on there about hotspotting. If you're interested in that area, then that's a good place to go. We also have the Larson webinar channel. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to do all these links. And this channel, we have all our previous webinars on there, and this one will be on there as well. And all the slides that we present are on SlideShare. So again, you can go to there. But the email tomorrow will have the links to the recording and today's slides. So all I can say is thank you for joining us. Have a great day, and hope we can join another webinar soon. Thank you and goodbye.